The Japanese insult hung in the air like poison, and Maya Chen knew that her silence would cost her everything, or her response would change everything. 48 hours earlier, Aurelius occupied 3 floors of Chicago's Hancock Tower, but the restaurant itself existed on the 95th floor, where Lake Michigan stretched like hammered silver, and the city below resembled a circuit board of light. Reservations required 14 months of advance booking and a willingness to spend $400 per person before wine. The interior was a study in controlled opulence, hand-carved zebra wood panels from Gabon, tables of book-matched Calacatta marble, and lighting designed by a firm that normally worked on 5-star hotels in Dubai. The sommelier's collection included bottles worth more than luxury cars, and the silence between courses carried the specific quality of extreme wealth: hushed, reverential, expensive. Maya Chen moved through this rarefied space like a shadow, her 24-year-old frame wrapped in the restaurant's regulation uniform. Crisp white shirt, black vest with satin lapels, black trousers pressed to razor creases, and shoes polished until they reflected the recessed lighting above. Her black hair was pulled into a regulation chignon so tight it gave her headaches, emphasizing cheekbones that had grown too prominent over the past 2 years. Dark circles beneath her eyes spoke of exhaustion that went bone deep, the kind that came from working double shifts 6 days a week with no end in sight. She had been on her feet for 13 hours. Her shift had started at 9 that morning and wouldn't end until 1 in the morning. Tomorrow she would do it again, because her father's Parkinson's disease didn't take holidays, and neither did the $280,000 in medical debt that had swallowed their lives like a sinkhole opening beneath a house. 26 months ago, Maya had been completing her master's degree in East Asian Studies at Northwestern University, specializing in Japanese literature and cultural history. She had spent a year studying at Waseda University in Tokyo, published 2 papers on Heian period poetry, and been accepted into a PhD program with full funding. Then her father's diagnosis had arrived, followed by his rapid deterioration, the experimental treatments, the insurance denials. There had been a choice that wasn't really a choice: watch her father lose his ability to walk and speak within months, or mortgage everything for treatment. Maya had withdrawn from Northwestern, sold her car, moved back into her childhood bedroom, and eventually found herself here, carrying $1,000 bottles of wine for people who wouldn't notice if she disappeared mid-sentence. The evening crowd represented Chicago's apex: private equity managers, real estate moguls, tech entrepreneurs who had sold companies for 9 figures, and tonight, Hiroshi Takahashi, founder and CEO of Sakura Capital Management, a hedge fund empire managing $47 billion in assets. Takahashi himself was worth a personal fortune of $3.2 billion according to the most recent Forbes list, built on aggressive currency trading and leveraged buyouts across Asian markets. He sat at table 12, the restaurant's most prominent position, wearing a bespoke Tom Ford suit in charcoal gray that had been tailored in London, complemented by a Patek Philippe watch worth more than Maya's annual salary. At 54, Takahashi possessed the particular arrogance of men who had conquered international finance and confused market dominance with human superiority. His face, tanned from a recent trip to his vacation home in Kyoto, held an expression of perpetual assessment, as though everything existed solely for his evaluation or dismissal. He was dining with 3 associates, fellow executives in expensive suits, and his son, Kenji, a 26-year-old who worked at Sakura Capital and wore his inheritance like armor. They were speaking in English, but their conversation kept lapsing into Japanese. Quick asides, private jokes, comments clearly not meant for the staff serving them. Maya refilled water glasses, delivered courses, and remained invisible, exactly as her training required. She was clearing their appetizer plates when Kenji made a joke in Japanese that caused the entire table to laugh. Something about the previous waitress and her appearance. Maya's hands remained steady, her face neutral. Then Hiroshi Takahashi looked directly at Maya as she reached for his plate. He spoke to his son in rapid Japanese, his tone casual, dismissive. Billionaire, na. Mada de zombie mitai da. Kom nagauji restaurant, ni fusawashikanai. Maneja ni et de. Mote thinging and eat way to mo. This girl looks completely exhausted. Like a zombie. She's not appropriate for a restaurant of this caliber. I should speak to the manager and have them bring us a more presentable waitress. The other men at the table chuckled. Kenji added his own comment. America na sabasiath abandani for gadi. Rear banaraji kabida. American service industry really is low quality. In Japan, she'd be fired immediately. Maya's hands, reaching for the plate, stopped moving. Her heart hammered against her ribs with a force that made her dizzy. She had endured 2 years of invisibility, of swallowing humiliation, of pretending not to exist. But this casual cruelty delivered in a language they assumed was a shield, was different. She straightened slowly, the plate still in her hand. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but crystalline clear, and the words came in perfect Tokyo dialect Japanese, pitched with the formal respect required when addressing elders. Dabanth, Finghinga. Shikanis hafiratarity masaga, Sara wafuni lalfano tamanyarnan jan, Shuman akadomi taverkaradist. Shikashi, Ulkrani shalino na yo mitsoi shano jinkashitarity mas. I sincerely apologize, Mr. Takahashi. It's true that I am exhausted, but that's because I have been working without rest for 2 years to pay for my father's medical expenses. However, I always do my absolute best to ensure no disrespect to our guests. The silence that descended over table 12 was absolute, a vacuum that seemed to pull oxygen from the surrounding air. Hiroshi Takahashi's face had frozen mid-smile, his expression locked between shock and something darker. His son Kenji had gone pale, his water glass suspended halfway to his mouth. The 3 other executives stared at Maya as though she had materialized from thin air, a ghost suddenly made corporeal. The surrounding tables had gone quiet too, patrons and staff sensing the shift in atmosphere, the sudden crackling tension that accompanied public confrontation in expensive spaces. The sommelier stood frozen near the wine station, his eyes wide. Takahashi set down his fork with precise, controlled movements. When he spoke, it was in English, his accent slight, but his words sharp. You speak Japanese. Yes, sir. Maya's voice remained steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. I studied at Waseda University. I completed my master's degree in East Asian Studies with a specialization in Japanese literature and cultural history before. She stopped herself, the unfinished sentence hanging between them. Before what? Takahashi's tone carried genuine curiosity now, mixed with something that might have been embarrassment. Before my father's illness required me to withdraw and find immediate employment. Kenji shifted in his seat, his face flushed with shame. He spoke quietly in Japanese. Fuko, plain. Father, this is bad. English, Takahashi snapped at his son. If this young woman understands Japanese, we will have the courtesy of speaking a language everyone can understand. He turned back to Maya, his expression difficult to read. Your Japanese is exceptionally good. Native level fluency. Where did you study in Tokyo? Waseda University, sir. I spent 14 months there researching Heian period literature, specifically the works of Sei Shonagon and Murasaki Shikibu. I also studied classical Japanese, Kinbun, and modern business Japanese. One of the executives leaned forward. You studied the Pillow Book in the original classical Japanese? Yes, sir. I also translated 3 previously untranslated sections for my thesis. Takahashi sat back in his chair, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. The restaurant around them had resumed normal noise levels, but Maya could feel eyes on them from neighboring tables, staff members watching from strategic positions. The maitre d', Thomas, stood near the kitchen entrance, his expression caught between concern and fascination. So, Takahashi said slowly, you understood everything we said this evening. Yes, sir. Maya's voice remained level, professional, though her hands had begun to tremble. Including your comments about my appearance and your intention to request a different waitress. The shame on Kenji's face deepened to something like horror. One of the executives let out a low breath. Another studied his plate intensely. I see. Takahashi's jaw tightened. For a long moment, he said nothing, and Maya waited for the inevitable. Termination, public humiliation, escort from the restaurant. She had broken every rule of service industry survival, had made herself visible, had challenged a billionaire customer, had destroyed her own invisibility. Then Takahashi did something unexpected. He stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and bowed. A formal, precise bow from the waist, the kind reserved for genuine apologies in Japanese culture. Surely Itashi Mashita. I was extremely rude. He straightened, meeting her eyes directly. There is no excuse for my behavior. I spoke cruelly about someone I assumed could not understand me, which makes it not only rude but cowardly. My son and I both owe you an apology. Kenji stood as well, bowing deeply. Bandani shensi gozaimasen deshita. I truly apologize. The other executives shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether they should also bow. The restaurant had gone quiet again, witnessing something rare, a man of extreme wealth and power publicly acknowledging fault. Maya stood perfectly still, her years of academic training warring with her 2 years of service industry conditioning. The scholar in her recognized the sincerity of the formal apology. The exhausted waitress in her waited for the other shoe to drop. However, Takahashi continued, sitting back down and gesturing for Maya to remain at the table. An apology is insufficient. Tell me, miss, what is your name? Maya-chan, sir. Miss Chen, you said you withdrew from your studies due to your father's illness. What were your plans before that happened? Maya hesitated. The truthful answer felt too vulnerable, too much like hoping for something impossible. I was accepted into Northwestern's PhD program with full funding. I plan to complete my doctorate and eventually teach at the university level, specializing in Japanese cultural history. And now you work here. Yes, sir. My father has Parkinson's disease. The experimental treatments cost $280,000 over 2 years. Insurance covered a fraction. I made a choice. Takahashi's expression had shifted into something complicated. Respect mixed with calculation, mixed with what might have been genuine remorse. He pulled out his phone, typed something, then looked up at her. Miss Chen, I'm going to make you an offer, and I want you to understand it comes not from guilt, though I feel that, but from recognizing wasted talent. Sakura Capital is opening a Tokyo office for our cultural acquisition division. We invest in traditional Japanese arts, crafts, and cultural properties. We need someone who understands both cultures deeply, speaks flawless Japanese, and can navigate complex cultural negotiations. He paused, letting his words sink in. I'm offering you a position as Cultural Liaison Director. Base salary $175,000. Full medical benefits including coverage for pre-existing conditions, which would include your father's care. Housing allowance for Tokyo. You would start in 3 months after training here in Chicago. Maya's vision blurred slightly. The number he'd stated was more than 6 times her current salary. Medical coverage for her father meant no more debt, no more double shifts, no more choosing between his medication and rent. There is one condition, Takahashi continued. And there it was. The catch. The moment where something too good collapsed into something impossible, or inappropriate, or demeaning. Maya braced herself, her hands gripping the plate she still held like a shield. Around them, the restaurant had gone silent again, the diners at nearby tables openly watching now, no longer pretending disinterest. Even the kitchen staff had emerged slightly, clustering near the entrance to witness the conclusion of whatever drama was unfolding. Takahashi's expression was serious, his voice formal. The condition is that you accept this position because you are genuinely qualified, not because I insulted you. I need you to look at the job description, research the position, and make an informed choice. I will not have you accept out of desperation, or because I pressured you after behaving badly. That would be its own form of coercion, and I've been enough of an asshole tonight. The vulgarity, delivered in his precise accent, broke the tension slightly. One of his executives let out a surprised laugh. I'm serious, Takahashi continued. Sakura Capital invests in cultural properties worth tens of millions of dollars. I need someone who can read Edo period contracts, understand regional craft traditions, negotiate with artisans who speak in dialect, and navigate the relationship between traditional culture and modern commerce. If you're that person, and your credentials suggest you are, then this is a legitimate job offer. If you're not, or if you need time to consider, then I will also transfer $300,000 to cover your father's medical debt, with no strings attached. Consider that the price of my education and humility. Maya's mouth opened, then closed. Her mind struggled to process the sudden reversal, the sheer scope of what he was offering. Sir, I can't. The money alone is, you can. Takahashi's voice was firm. My net worth is $3.2 billion. $300,000 is, to me, the equivalent of about $20 to someone earning the median American income. It's what I spend on a business dinner without thinking. The fact that this amount would transform your life tells me everything about how broken our system is. I cannot fix that system, but I can fix my own behavior." He pulled out a business card, wrote something on the back, and handed it to her. "This is my personal email and my assistant's contact information. Think about the job. Research it. If you want it, email me. If you don't want it but need help with your father's care, email me that too." Kenji leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Miss Chen, I also want to apologize directly. What I said was cruel and ignorant. My father is right. You're clearly overqualified for this position, and I have no excuse for my behavior." Maya took the business card with trembling hands. On the back, in precise handwriting, Takahashi had written both an email address and a phone number. When she looked up, she found herself the focus of the entire table's attention, not dismissive now, but genuinely waiting for her response. Thomas, the maitre d', materialized at her elbow. He spoke quietly. "Maya, why don't you take the rest of the evening off? We'll cover your tables. Go home. Think about things." "I can't afford," Maya started. "Paid," Thomas said firmly. "Go home." Maya looked down at the business card, then at Takahashi, who watched her with an expression of genuine interest, seeing her, finally, as a person rather than furniture. She thought about her father, sitting in their small apartment, struggling with buttons on his shirt. She thought about the medical bills stacked on their kitchen table. She thought about her abandoned dissertation, the life she'd given up, the crushing exhaustion that had become her normal. She thought about the Japanese phrase she'd written in her journal 2 years ago, a quote from Seishonagon. "In spring, the dawn. In summer, the night. In autumn, the dusk. In winter, the early morning." Each season of life had its own beauty, its own possibility. "Mr. Takahashi," she said carefully, her voice steady now, "I will research the position thoroughly. I will consider your offer seriously. But I need to be clear about something first. I'm accepting nothing tonight. Not the job, not the money, not even the apology, until I've had time to think about what I want my life to look like. I've spent 2 years reacting to emergencies. I need 24 hours to make a decision based on something other than desperation." Takahashi's face broke into a genuine smile, not the condescending expression he'd worn earlier, but something that looked like respect. "That is exactly the answer I was hoping to hear. Someone who makes major life decisions under pressure is not someone I want handling multi-million-dollar cultural negotiations." He stood and bowed again, less formally this time. 24 hours. Email me. Or don't. Either way, you have taught me something valuable tonight." Maya bowed in return, the gesture automatic after her time in Japan. Then she turned and walked toward the staff area, her legs shaking, the business card pressed against her palm like a talisman. She changed out of her uniform in the staff locker room, her movements slow and dreamlike. When she emerged wearing jeans and a sweater, Thomas was waiting with an envelope. "Takahashi left this with me. Said to give it to you after you'd left." Inside was a check for $1,500, triple what she would have earned from the table, and a note in English, "For your time translating tonight. You earned this." Maya Chen walked out of Aurelius at 10:47 p.m., 8 hours before her shift was supposed to end. She took the elevator down 95 floors and emerged onto Michigan Avenue, where Lake Michigan stretched dark and vast beyond the buildings. The November wind cut through her jacket, but she barely felt it. She pulled out her phone and called her father. When he answered, his voice was slurred from medication, but he was alert. "Maya, you're off early, Dad," she said, and her voice broke slightly. "Something happened tonight. Something impossible. I need to come home and tell you about it. But I think things might be okay. Finally, I think we might be okay." She walked toward the L station, the business card in her pocket, and possibility unfurling in her chest like a bird spreading its wings after years in a cage. Behind her, Chicago glittered like a promise. Ahead, her father was waiting. And tomorrow, she would wake up and decide what the next season of her life would look like, not as a ghost, not as someone invisible, but as herself, finally seen.